I realise that the title of this video might raise some questions because not 2 videos ago I was showing you all of my unread books and talking about how my main reading goal for 2019 is to make a wedge in those unread books. I think I counted over 200 on that list, and that is still undoubtedly my main goal. I'm still putting myself on something of a book buying ban, but there are a few books that are being released this year that I absolutely have to have and already have on pre-order, and I just wanted to share those 10 with you today. So I'm going to try and do it in release order. I've got my phone which has got all the information on it, so if you see me looking down, that is what I'm looking at. So the first book that I'm going to talk about is King of Scars by Leigh Bardugo, and I am so excited for this book. It comes out at the end of January, and we follow the story of Nikolai, who is one of the characters that we meet in the Grisha books and in the Six of Crows duology, and this is his very own duology. So this is the first one, and I am so excited because having read the Grisha books and enjoyed them but not being blown away by them, and then having read the Six of Crows duology and being utterly blown away by it, I'm so excited to see where Leigh Bardugo takes her story next. I feel like her writing is just getting better and better as she goes along, and I'm really excited for this one. I just think it's going to be brilliant. The next book I'm going to talk about is Four Dead Queens by Astrid Schultz, and this is a YA fantasy that comes out at the end of February, and it's basically the story of a realm which has been separated into quarters, and each quarter is ruled by a different queen, and each quarter values different things. So you've got the quarter that values education and intellect, you've got the quarter that values entertainment and is very passionate, and so on and so on. And we follow the story of our protagonist, who I believe is a thief. She steals and sells things on the black market. She comes across a communication device, and on that device is a recording of all 4 queens being brutally murdered in different ways, and that's all I know about the story. I saw this on someone's video recently, I can't remember, they were talking about it and they were saying how good it was, and immediately I thought that it would be the kind of book that was right up my street, so I pre-ordered it. Then we have a book coming out at the end of March, and that is Transcription by Kate Atkinson. This is a historical fiction book. It begins in 1940 and follows a young girl who is pulled into the world of espionage, and then we flash forward to 10 years later when the same woman is working for the BBC, and something connecting to her past as a World War II spy catches up with her. And I pre-ordered this after seeing Krista from Books and Jams talk about it on her Insta stories. I think she has read it, she enjoyed it, it really piqued my interest. I've read a couple of Kate Atkinson's other books and enjoyed them, so I thought that I would give that one a go. Then we have the book that I am the most excited for, and it has already been released. It came out in September but in hardback, and I have all her other books, all this author's other books in paperback, and I have waited so patiently for this one to come out in paperback because I just want to read it. I cannot wait, and it comes out in May, and I'm sure it will come as no surprise to a vast majority of you that it is Kate Morton's latest book. I'm talking about The Clockmakers Daughter. It has a really similar setup to many of Kate, in fact maybe all of Kate Morton's other books, in that it has a dual timeline. So the first timeline, it takes place in the 1860s, and we're following the story of a group of young artists who go and stay somewhere for the summer, and it pretty much turns out to be the summer from hell, because by the end of it, one woman is dead, one woman has vanished, a priceless family heirloom has disappeared, and one man's life is left in complete and utter ruin. And then we flash forward 150 years, and someone, I think it's a young woman, begins to try and uncover the secrets of what happened in that summer. So it's a really classic Kate Morton setup to have these two timelines and a mystery that needs to be solved. But you know what, I am so here for it. I'm so excited. I have tried as much as possible to remain spoiler free. I haven't looked at any of the ratings on Goodreads. I don't want to. No, I want to go in as blind as possible so that I can just savour every single moment of the book. So the next book I am going to talk about is Wondersmith, which is the second book in the Nevermore series by Jessica Townsend. I read Nevermore last year and really loved it. The basic setup is that it is a middle grade book about a young girl who has spent her whole life knowing that on her 11th birthday she was going to die, and she believes that she is the reason for things going wrong for everybody she comes into contact with. And then on the eve of her birthday, a mysterious figure appears in her home and whisks her away to the magical land of Nevermore, and all kinds of adventures and coming of age things happen after that. And I was surprised actually how much I enjoyed Nevermore. I think when I picked it up, I was trying to temper my expectations a little bit because so many people had been so enthusiastic about it, but it really lived up to the hype. I have heard people compare it to Harry Potter and talk about kind of magical school vibes, which it definitely didn't have for me. I didn't read that into it at all, but it was a really enjoyable book nonetheless. I gave it to Meg. Meg really enjoyed it, so in fact we're both very much looking forward to the release of Wondersmith later in the year. I do believe again that this might already be out in hardback, but I'm waiting for the paperback, which will be released at the end of May. Then we have Children of Virtue and Vengeance by Tomi Adeyemi. The first book in this series was called Children of Blood and Bone. It's a YA fantasy with a story that takes a lot of influence from West African culture. I read Children of Blood and Bone back in the summer, and again absolutely loved it. It was so unique and so clever, and just there was so much to love about it. And on top of all of that, its influence and inspiration from the West African culture is just not something that I've read masses about, and I just thought that it was so clever. And this is the next installment, and given that Children of Blood and Bone ended on a massive cliffhanger, I'm really excited. This comes out, I think I said already, at the end of May, and again I'm just preparing to have my socks blown off because the first one was so good. There is a magic system, there's a little bit of coming of age, there's a little bit of kind of angst from our protagonist as she tries to traverse a new world and a new situation that she finds herself in. But yeah, it was just absolutely fantastic. I mean, it has a very standard YA fantasy setup in that you are in a world where magic has been outlawed and then magic makes a reappearance, but I really feel like that's the only kind of tropey element, and the author has worked really hard to introduce some really fascinating concepts. So yeah, it's just a really interesting book, and I cannot wait to see what the author does next. Then we have A Spark of Light by Jodi Picoult. Again, I think this book is out already, but I'm waiting for the paperback, and the paperback will be released at the end of June. I have heard mixed things about this book. The basic premise is there is a hostage situation that occurs in a women's sexual health clinic, and yeah, I've seen mixed things, but on the whole I tend to enjoy Jodi Picoult's books. I don't always love her writing style or her overall storyline, but the element that I enjoy is the questions that she raises. She often challenges grey areas or things where if someone were to ask you, what do you think about this, you would have an automatic answer that you would give, but her books really make you reconsider that. Why do you think that? What has caused you to think that? Could you think a different way? And I always finish her books with something to kind of process and mull and think over, so I love the challenge that comes from reading her books. So I am interested to read this one. I enjoyed Small Great Things. I thought that it was fun. I don't think it was the best one of her books that I've ever read, but I thought that it was fine, and in many ways I sort of get the impression that she's moving a little bit into the realms of the likes of John Grisham, who his later books, not so much now actually, his newest ones have been okay, but there was like a middling period where his books just weren't that good, and people who had been diehard Grisham fans, myself included, were a little bit overcritical of his books because we were comparing them to some amazing ones. And I sort of feel like it might be the same with Jodi Picoult, that she has so many avid fans that they're just left feeling a little bit disappointed by her books. So we'll see. I mean, I'm basing that on a few different reviews that I've read and seen and bits of information that I've picked up on. It might be completely different when I come to read it. So yeah, another one that I have decided to pre-order. Then again, these final three have all been released already in hardback, but I am waiting very patiently for the release of the paperback editions, but I don't actually have release dates for them, and I wanted to include them anyway because they are three books that I'm very, very excited about. I just don't have exact release dates for them yet. So the first one is Once Upon a River by Diane Setterfield. She is the author of The 13th Tale, which I read a number of years ago and absolutely loved. I have seen Katie from Life Between Words has read this and really rated it, so I'm very excited about it. It is historical fiction. It's set in London against the backdrop of the Thames. It begins when a stranger bursts into an inn. He is injured and in his arms there is a dead girl, and a few hours later this girl takes a breath and reawakens or revives or whatever, and it's kind of historical fiction with an element of magical realism thrown in, and I'm just very, very excited to read it. It sounds like the kind of book that is going to be right up my street, and I can't wait to get my hands on a copy. Then we have Tombland by C.J. Sansom. C.J. Sansom is the author of one of my favourite historical fiction detective series, all about a hunchback solicitor in the Tudor period called Shardlake, and that might sound like a really odd combination of factors, but the books are just fantastic. I think this is book 6 maybe, and I have been avidly awaiting the return of Shardlake to my life. So this particular book is set in 1549. It's 2 years after the death of King Henry VIII, and once again Shardlake is thrust into the centre of a political drama that he must fix. So I'm just very, very excited for it. I think I've said I'm really excited for all of these books, but it is simply true. C.J. Sansom is one of my auto by authors like Kate Morton. As soon as I see that he is releasing something, I am going to want to get hold of it, and I bought my brother the hardback of Tombland for Christmas, and I was really, really tempted to read it before I gave it to him, but I have all his other books in paperback, so I'm going to be patient and wait for the release date to come out. But yeah, I'm just very, very excited. The other thing is the books are usually absolutely huge. They're not simple, straightforward, small reads, but yeah, I'm very, very excited to fall back into the world of Shardlake. I am a huge historical fiction fan, and I particularly love stuff set in Tudor times, and the thing that I enjoy about these books is the twist of Shardlake. I called it a detective novel, but he is a solicitor who is sent in to deal with certain issues that the Crown don't want to be embarrassed by usually. So yeah, just very excited. And then the final one I'm going to talk about today is called The Binding by Bridget Collins. As I said, this has already been released in hardback. It's getting an overwhelming amount of praise, and I'm just going to read you the synopsis because I don't think that I could do it any more justice. So it says, Emmett Farmer is working in the fields when a letter arrives summoning him to begin an apprenticeship. He will work for a bookbinder, a vocation that arouses fear, superstition and prejudice, but one neither he nor his parents can afford to refuse. He will learn to handcraft beautiful volumes, and within each he will capture something unique and extraordinary, a memory. If there's something you want to forget, he can help. If there's something you need to erase, he can assist. Your past will be stored safely in a book, and you will never remember your secret, however terrible. In a vault, under his mentor's workshop, row upon row of books and memories are meticulously stored and recorded. Then one day Emmett makes an astonishing discovery. One of them has his name on it. The binding is an unforgettable, magical novel, a boundary-defying love story, and a unique literary event. So, yeah, I think that sounds absolutely incredible, and I can't wait to read it. So there you go, they are 10 books that I'm really looking forward to receiving and hopefully reading in 2019. Do let me know in the comments down below any books that you have heard about that are being released in 2019 that you are particularly excited for. I'm always interested to know. Thank you for watching. If you aren't subscribed already, please do consider clicking that button. Don't forget to give me the thumbs up, and I will see you all soon.